that everyone can be familiar with the things that we're working on. And if you ever have any thoughts, you just let us know. Okay. Yes, Jamie. And it's also on the back of the House to House, Heart to Heart. So everyone that gets one of those, it has that too.
Good evening. I'm going to try to shorten this. If not, we can tag it into next week's lesson. A lot going on, and that's good. This is a good time of year to be busy, and I tell you, I really enjoyed this morning. A person from my past. It's just we hadn't probably seen Tim in probably 18 years, and kept up with him. And by the way, they thought highly of our congregation. Tim is kind of he has preached in places full-time, well, sort of full-time. He's kind of retired from his regular work, and just a good man from simpler days, the days when you had to go to a bookstore for the most part. And Gospel Advocate was really neat back then because it was the magazine, and you had these scholarly people that would be there, and you had the people that ran it, and it was a good family, the Anderson family. They ran into some tragedy, and then it got bought out, and it just, just gradually, today's times, it just could not be successful. But they had the bookstore right next to it, and so you could go to the bookstore, and Tim would always grab our kid and just let us look around in peace, and it was always a joy to see him. And I'm not lying about the fact that they had, when I'd walk in, they knew me, and if Haley wasn't with me, I wasn't allowed to buy anything. So I could call her, and she could give, yeah, it's okay or not okay, but because I'd liable to say, well, I want this one, that one. I mean, a fairly fresh preacher and a bookstore, it's like a candy store to them, and wants one of each, and they get expensive if you do it that way. But some good people. So it was a good morning. We're going to talk about Daniel chapter 11. Now, to many of you, you may not realize how amazing this chapter is. And I don't want to go too much into the weeds. We could go into some of the history, and, I may write up, if anybody's interested in it. I think Rex Turner Sr. has the gold standard on the book of Daniel. Now, he actually does it in chronological order, which is, as we've looked at, is not the same as the way the books are. And in fact, you'll see we're on chapter 11, and chapter 11 is kind of midway in it. It's just shortly after the fall of Babylon. But Rex Turner presents it that way, but he will go through what happens in 11. I'll point out when we get there, and he will integrate the historical names that fit these different kings. And to be honest, Daniel 11 is the chapter that these liberal scholars that don't believe in inspiration, don't believe in prophecy, they say it's not possible. It had to have been written sometime at a later date. However, we know it was written when it was written. Once again, we say over and over again, the Septuagint was compiled about 250 BC, and Daniel was always included in its fullest form. And most of these things that happen in Daniel 11 occur after that time or somewhere close to it. And so, anyway, it is amazing. If anybody wants to see this, I won't loan it out because this is the golden standard. By the way, Rex Turner, just a little bit about him. He's the only person I know that actually 2 universities affiliated with the Churches of Christ were started by him. Faulkner University and what is now known as Amridge. Both of them have ties as him being the one that kind of created them, and just a good scholar. But like I say, It is amazing, some of this Daniel. We'll try to do it as quickly as we can. As we've said, this is the way we always look at Daniel, the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had in Daniel 2. We're primarily going to deal, though, in Daniel 11 with just the Medo-Persians and the Greek. And so that's all we're dealing with. And so you can see the dates of the Greek Empire, the Hellenistic Empire. Of course, we know after Alexander the Great, it's divided in fours, but 331 BC to 63 BC. So most of the things that's occurring in Daniel 11 occur much later than that 250 BC time frame. Now, when we get into this about the Greek Empire after Alexander the Great, divided into fours, and that is true, and that's historically accurate, and you can see that. However, there are only two kingdoms that really pertain to the future of Jerusalem and to the Jews, and that is the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemy kingdom or empire. And what happens is, if you look at most maps, now looky here. I was going to do this side and Steve's on the other side. I'm still going to do this side. And anyway, you see here this map and this line here, what separated the Seleucid kingdom and the Ptolemy kingdom, it would fluctuate. It would sometimes be up here, sometimes it go down here, up here, down here, depending on the war. And if you look, Jerusalem is right where the battle lines often would be. So part of the time, Jerusalem was under the Ptolemy Empire, and part of the time is under the Seleucid Empire. Now, these are the kings of the Medo-Persian Empire. And some of this, you say, wait a second, some of the dates overlap. And that's because not all of them were emperors over the entire Medo-Persian Empire. Some were just kings over the Babylon region, such as Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Great. He was over everything, and so that's why the dates somewhat overlap. Some of these names you'll be familiar with, though, and not just through biblical things, but through historical things. So Darius the Mede was given reign over just Babylon. And so we read about him at times in Daniel. He wasn't over all the Medo-Persian Empire, though. He was underneath Cyrus the Great. Ahasuerus, as most time we'll see it depicted in, anyone know what book? Esther, yeah, that's right. Xerxes is the king during the time of Esther. You might not realize, but he is depicted in Daniel 11, and we'll point that out when we get there. But it is rather a significant historical event, and when Esther picks up, I'll let you know when that occurred. Artaxerxes, king during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. So you read about him in both those books. And Alexander the Great conquers about 330 BC, somewhere thereabouts, and you can see the list of the kings throughout that time. Now, this king, during Esther, I've pointed out when I've done lessons from Esther, he wasn't a good guy. And, sometimes I think he's almost depicted in a romantic thing, like, he was not a good guy. And, we need to understand that he wasn't. Now Esther was good, but Ahasuerus was not a good man. And there's a lot of things that go on during that, and we'll talk about that. The Ptolemaic dynasty, now they were the ones in Egypt, what we know as of Egypt. And you see some of these people, and by the way, if you kept going, not too far after this Ptolemy the 10th, you would get to a woman that was the leader of the Ptolemy Empire, and her name is Cleopatra. And she was a Greek by heritage. And these people even started calling themselves, they liked the Egyptian culture, and they would start calling themselves pharaohs, but they had no Egyptian blood in them. So they were Middle Eastern and from Greece and of lineage. And so this is theirs. And then you have the Seleucid dynasty, and their kings either went by the name of Seleucid the First or Seleucids or Antiochus. And so they kind of alternate that title or that name. The one of key interest is this Antiochus IV Epiphanes. He should have never been king. And I'll just give you a little something so maybe you can see it when we read it. But Antiochus Epiphanes was not supposed to have been king. It was his brother, Seleucus IV. Seleucus IV, well, he kind of drunk something that just didn't agree with him, that his brother had slipped into his drink, and needless to say, he died from it. And so then Antiochus IV became king. And so, he great guy, once again. He probably is one of the most evil villains probably of all this time during that. The north versus the south. And so that's how Daniel depicts these two. The Seleucid kingdom is depicted as the north, and the Ptolemy kingdom is depicted as the south. And once again, Jerusalem is right in the middle, and they would be battling one another. And so that's why there's prophecies like this. Now, it reads like history. And it's hard to convey that if you don't really read the history, but I don't want to bore you with, not everybody's into history to this level, but it is truly amazing. In Daniel 11, verses 1 through 4, it says, "And as for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. And I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and a 4th shall be far richer than all them. And when he has become strong, through his riches he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece." I'm going to stop there. Guess which king this would be if you count it down and the way he's looking at it? This would be Ahasuerus or Xerxes. Now, he was a powerful king and he wanted more. And he decided he was going to invade Greece and conquer it. Well, needless to say, the Greece people from Greek, they didn't really care for it. They would have voted no on that. Well, anyway, there's a lot of historical events. Have you ever heard? In fact, they did a movie based on graphic novel, The 300, way over exaggerated. In fact, they depict Xerxes as being this 7-foot tall giant and whatever. He wasn't, but yet, for the villain purposes, the way this was created, he served that purpose. But the 300, there's actually more than 300, but needless to say, I've read estimates. There were maybe as many as 5 million troops that Xerxes took with him. Now, not all of them were Medo-Persians. Some of them were hired hands. Some of them were slaves and other things. This whole entourage that he took. And he was a man of debauchery, so he even took women with him. So, you can just kind of use your imagination there. But anyway, it didn't go well. And on, he was thwarted. It wasn't this quick battle. Even the weather didn't cooperate with him and destroyed a lot of their ships. And then something he never counted on, the Greeks even took to burning some of their own villages, so the Persians would have nothing even to loot. And so it became a very empty battle. Now, needless to say, this Ahasuerus, or Xerxes, depending on what name you want to use for him, he didn't like it. He wasn't used to defeat like this, and he was very upset. And you know what he did when he returned? He returned home even before the battles were done. He returns home to Susa, the capital. And he returns home and he has this debaucherous feast. And he has all the people that's close to him, and they drink, and they have women. And it gets so rowdy that he even tries to get his wife, Vashti, to, you might know the rest of this. You see, it's right after his defeat in battle that these events in the book of Esther take place. And so anyway, it talks about them. Once again, this is, before these events took place. Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion and do as he wills. Now, this mighty king, we're talking about Alexander the Great. And what Xerxes did is the Greeks hated the Persians. And even though it was 150 years, that hate festered. And so really, I think all Alexander wanted to do, he was okay with conquering the world, but all he really wanted was to defeat the Persians and make them pay. Anyway, so then it says, and as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken and divided toward the four winds. And indeed, it was divided into four parts of heaven, but not to his posterity. He did have a baby, but the baby was killed pretty early on after he died. Not according to the authority with which he ruled. None of these were as dominant as what his kingdom was. For his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others beside these. And so it just keeps reading like this, just history. Then the king of the south shall be strong, but one of his princes shall be stronger than he and shall rule, and his authority. Now, like I said, he goes through and he'll document which king we're talking about each time. That's how historically accurate, even though it's prophecy, that this reads. And some years they shall make an alliance, and the daughter of the king, and he'll point out which this daughter's name was and how this worked. King of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the strength of her arm, and he and his arm shall not endure, but she shall be given up, and her attendants, he who fathered her and he who supported her in those times. And from a branch, from her roots, one shall arise in his place. He shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he shall deal with them and shall prevail. He shall also carry off to Egypt their gods with their metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold. And for some years he shall refrain from attacking the king of the north. And once again, we see that this constant battle would shift north and south. North would rise up and be strong, then south would be stronger. It says, then the latter shall come into the realm of the king in the south, but shall return to his own land. His son shall wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces, which shall keep coming and overflow and pass through. And again shall carry the war as far as his fortress. Then the king of the south, moved with rage, shall come out and fight against the king of the north, and he shall raise a great multitude, but it shall be given into his hand. And when the multitude is taken away, his heart shall be exalted. Now, I could go through and point out who these kings are, but most of them are not of that much consequence, and you wouldn't remember. And so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to the one that we want to highlight on. Don't want to go past it. Okay, in verse 20, then shall arise in his place one who shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be broken, neither in anger nor battle. In his place shall rise a contemptible person to whom royal majesty has not been given. Now, this is Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Once again, his brother mysteriously died of poison. Wasn't so mysterious, but anyway, he wasn't supposed to be the king. Not given. He shall come in without warning and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. He was a talker. Armies shall be utterly swept away before him and broken, even the prince of the covenant. And from the time that an alliance is made with him, he shall exact deceitfully, and he shall become strong with a small people. Without warning, he shall come into the richest parts of the province, and he shall do what neither his fathers nor his fathers' fathers have done, scattering among them plunder, spoil, and and he shall devise plans against strongholds, but only for a time. He shall stir up his power and his heart against the king of the south with great army, and the king of the south shall wage war with an exceedingly great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for plot shall be devised against him. Even those who eat his food shall break him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. And as for the two kings, their hearts shall be bent on doing evil. They shall not speak lies at the same table, but to no avail. For the end is yet to be at the time appointed, and he shall return to his land with great wealth, but his heart shall be set against the holy covenant, and he shall work his will and return to his own land. At the time appointed he shall return and come to the south, but it shall not be this time as it was before. For ships of Kittim shall come against him, and he shall be afraid to withdraw and turn back in a rage and take action against the holy covenant. He shall turn back and pay attention to those who forsake the holy covenant. Forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and fortress. Remember, he's the one that actually had a pig sacrificed on the altar of burnt offering. He's the one that desecrated the temple. He's the one that required all males to have surgeries to cover up any sign of circumcision. He made them change their names. He forbade the speaking in Hebrew. And on the list could go. And they shall set up the abomination that makes desolate. He shall seduce with flattery those who violate the covenant. But the people who know their God shall stand firm and take action. And of course, we know about the Maccabean revolution, and that takes place during this time. And the wise among the people shall make many understand, though for some days thou shalt stumble by sword and flame, by captivity and plunder. When they stumble, they shall receive a little help. And many shall join themselves to them with flattery, and some of the wise shall stumble, so they may be refined, purified, and made white, until the time of the end, for it still awaits the appointed time. And the king shall do as he wills. He shall exalt himself, magnify himself above every god. He shall speak astonishing things against the God of gods. He shall prosper till the indignation is accomplished. What is decreed shall be done. He shall pay no attention to the gods of his fathers, or to the one beloved by women. He shall not pay attention to any other god, for he shall magnify himself above all. He shall honor the God of fortresses instead of these. A God whom his fathers did not know, he shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He shall deal with the strongest fortresses. With the help of a foreign god, those who acknowledge him, he shall load with honor. He shall make them rulers over many, and shall divide the land for a price. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him. But the king of the north shall rush upon him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall come into countries, and shall overflow and pass through. He shall come into the glorious land, and tens of thousands shall fall, but these shall be delivered out of his hand, Edom and Moab, and the main part of the Ammonites. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall become ruler of the treasures of gold and of silver, and all the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans and the Cushites shall follow in his train. But news from the east and the north shall alarm him, and he shall go out with great fury to destroy and devote many to destruction. Part of this would be the rise of the Maccabees. And he shall pitch his partial tents between the sea with the glorious holy mountain. He shall come to his end with none to help him. Now, some of this seems a little cryptic, but like I say, it is exactly the life of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Now, we are going to read a little bit about him. According to the second book of Maccabees, now this is not inspired work, but it's written by someone, likely the Maccabees, about this time period. It's more of a history. He was horrifically injured in the following manner. This is Antiochus Epiphanes. You notice what it said about him? It doesn't say he dies in battle, but he'll come to his end and no one will be there to help him. Now, his death is not for the faint of heart. But the all-seeing Lord, the God of Israel, struck him with an incurable and invisible blow. As soon as he stopped speaking, he was seized with a pain in his bowels, for which there was no relief, and with sharp internal tortures, and that very justly, for he had tortured the bowels of others with many and strange inflictions. Yet he did not in any way stop his insolence, but was even more filled with arrogance, breathing fire in his rage against the Jews and giving orders to drive even faster. And so it came about that he fell out of his chariot as it was rushing along, and the fall was so hard as to torture every limb of his body. Thus he, who only a little while before had thought in his superhuman arrogance that he could command the waves of the sea, and had imagined that he could weigh the high mountains in a balance, was brought down to earth and carried in a litter, making the power of God manifest to all. And so the ungodly man's body swarmed with worms. And while he was still living, anguish and pain, his flesh rotted away. Because of the stench, the whole army felt revulsion at his decay. It's amazing how these things happen. You can talk about the providence of God and the way he worked. Someone that had been so horrendous to his people, caused so much harm. But what you think about is it was prophesied by Daniel at the very beginning of the Medo-Persian Empire, long before the Greeks ever had power there, long before there ever was a Seleucid kingdom. And yet, to a T, he writes what's going to take place to this man. Now, people don't like to believe in the book of Daniel, don't like to believe in Daniel 11. And there's a reason why. When predictive prophecy is that accurate, when has anyone ever predicted something that exact? I don't know if you counted how many kings are there, but there's a bunch of them. In fact, it goes through just about all the kings that we showed on that list. And it mentions them in some form or fashion. If you want to, you can go through a really good commentary like this, and you can read the names and point out the individual things. He will put in brackets the information as far as what the king's name was. This Antiochus the Epiphanes IV, he thought he was a god, and he found out. But Daniel had foretold it through this vision, this prophecy he had. How amazing is the book of Daniel. Predictive prophecy, no one does it. People sometimes say, well, I can predict the future. And you have people that say, well, look, I was right on this. Yeah, but how many things were they wrong? This by Daniel is exact. All these kings mentioned, all these events, these wars, these marriages, and then Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Only God could do that. How can we not believe in a God? What's amazing is that God, from the beginning of time, we've talked some about this in my Bible class, the scheme of redemption, his plan. All the way from Genesis 3:15, we read about it, but yet God had this plan even before time began, that he would send his son to die on the cross, to purchase our freedom from our sins and to purchase the church. This Sunday night, I know most of you are Christians, if not all. But if you're not, this is our opportunity to become one. Or if you're here tonight, maybe your faith has been waning and maybe you've done things. I hope that a lesson like tonight will fortify your faith. If you have any need at all, come now. Together we stand and sing.
When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, what a glory he sheds on our way. While we do his good will, he abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey.
So let's now